Hello everyone. In this video, we will be debunking the DRS by giving a brief overview of the processes involved to successfully engage in a DRS session with your colleagues. In this slide deck, we will be covering what is a DRS, the purpose of data-driven instruction, materials needed for a DRS, print and digital resources, the DRS protocol, a step-by-step guide, as well as outcomes of a DRS, agreements, and next steps. Before we begin, let's review the entire cycle of data-driven instruction to gain a better understanding of the big picture. So step one is guided planning. This is the guided planning sessions where you and your team will look at the standards matrix for the next unit and make a plan to teach the target standards. Step two is the implementation. This is where you will teach the standards using the strategies you discussed in the guided planning session. Step three is assess. This is where you will give the Illuminate unit test to your students. And step four is data reflection and analysis, aka the DRS. This is where you will use the data from the test to see where you are and make common agreements for where you are going with your students and instruction. This is the step of the data-driven instruction cycle that we will be focusing on in this slide deck. To begin, let's define what is a DRS. A DRS stands for Data Reflection Session. This takes place after you give your last unit assessment. The DRS is a time to reflect on data with your team. These are the nuts and bolts of a DRS, but why do we need to use data to inform instruction? This is a quote by John Hattie, author of the book Visible Learning, and he states, "A successful teacher establishes a student's expectations of their abilities, but then dispels those expectations by telling them they can do better. What a student achieved yesterday should never be okay tomorrow." And this is the purpose. This is why it is essential to review student data as a team to ensure that students' achievement levels from yesterday continue to improve tomorrow. With that being said, there are two main purposes for a DRS. The first is to analyze the data. This is where you work as a team to identify instructional strategies that are working and where there may be room for growth based on proficiency levels shown in student data. The second purpose is to turn that data into actions through common agreements, next steps, and to-do tasks divided between you and your team to ensure student growth. So what materials are needed for a DRS? There are 4 forms that Illuminate provides after giving your assessment. Form 1 and 2 are forms you need to print before the DRS session. Form 3 and Form 4 will be provided to you by your administrator. For detailed step-by-step instructions on how to print Forms 1 and 2, please refer to the links on this slide. You have either a written instructional form here or video instructions here. These will both walk you through the process of printing Form 1 and Form 2. There are also digital resources needed for a DRS. Many of your digital resources will be located in your Google Drive. The first is the DRS protocol form. These forms are site and grade level specific and were shared with you by your administrator. The next resource you will need is your standards matrix. This is located in your grade level shared drive. You will also want to refer to your guided planning outline, which is the third resource you will need. This was created in your guided planning session with your team and is also located in your grade level shared drive. So don't forget to bring your computer as you will be using your Google Drive during this meeting. Next, we will be discussing the protocols of a DRS. This is the form located in your drive, shared by your administrator, that you will use to complete the DRS session. Now, while your administrator has shared this with you, another quick way to find this form is simply using the search bar in your drive and searching DRS protocol. This should pull up your DRS protocol form for your grade level. You will notice that on this form, the steps for the DRS process are listed on one side of the table, and the notes that you will input are on the other side. The instructions are also listed for each step on this form. Simply follow the instructions and input the data for the last unit test that your students completed. In this video, we will briefly go over each step. As you can see, in the first row of the table, you're asked to engage in a brief reflection of the data from the last unit's assessment. You will look at the last unit assessment data to reflect as a team on the 4 key questions listed here. You will record your reflection notes on this side of the data form. Next, you will go to step 1 and input school-wide data. If you are unsure of the target percentage for your school-wide data, go back to the Unit 1 DRS form to find your school-wide data that was established at the beginning of the year. Then, input the data from this unit's assessment and discuss with your team how far off your grade level was from meeting the school-wide target, or how much did your grade level surpass the school-wide target. All of that information will be put into this table. After this discussion, you will move on to step 2 and compare any student movement you observed from last unit to this unit using the quadrant data provided to you in this session. With your team, you will look to identify any trends and document them on this form. Next, on step 3, you will look at your personal class data using Form 1 and identify all students who scored a 3 in each standard. You will then identify students that scored a 2 as well. The reason for noting these students is that they were only 1 or 2 questions away from being proficient on that standard. You will want to note these students and identify strategies for targeted spiral review to accelerate their growth on the standards missed. You will put your identify strategies for target students in this box here. In step 4, you will now begin examining summary results for your entire grade level. You will want to identify which standards were students the most successful in and which were the most challenging based on proficiency percentages for this unit. Then discuss as a team and list some best practices that were used which contributed to student achievement, as well as ideas and strategies to implement for student growth. Also, if certain teachers in your grade level had more success on a specific standard, this is the time to share those strategies and resources that were proven successful with the team. After reflecting on the previous unit, the next portion of the DRS is a guided reflection for the next unit assessment. In step 6, you will use the standards matrix located in your Google Drive to list the next unit's key 5 standards. In step 7, you will be given next unit's assessment and be able to view it to know how to best address the needs of students in order to ensure success of the next unit's assessment. Pay close attention to the vocabulary used and forms of questions asked on the assessment. Think about ways you can implement similar vocabulary and question stems in your upcoming unit instruction so that students are more exposed to the type of questioning they will be given on the test. In the notes section of your DRS protocol form, document any of these types of observations to describe what your students must demonstrate and be able to do on this assessment. In step 8, you will come back together as a team to discuss challenges observed on the assessment and how you, as a team, can address those challenges in your instruction of the next unit. In step 9, based on your team discussion, make common grade level agreements to support student learning. Remember, your agreements should be specific. Don't forget to include how many times a week and for how long you will be implementing the agreed upon strategies. In step 10, you will divide the work required to make your agreements a reality between team members. List the names of each team member and assign to-do tasks that the team will complete. At the very end, make sure you provide admin with your feedback in the 5-minute checkout portion of the DRS form. This was a very basic overview of the DRS protocol. If you would like more detailed instruction on specific steps, please click the link on this slide, which will take you to the Arenda slideshow presentation with detailed instructions for this process. So, what can you expect as an outcome to the DRS process? The first outcome of a DRS is your team agreements. Make sure that you know your role when leaving the DRS in making the agreements that your team decided on a reality. Also, make sure your team agreements are impactful, practical, and measurable. You may not want to try to implement too many agreements at once. The agreement should be something that is going to impact student growth, but also be implemented within the next week or so in your classrooms. With that being said, remember to be realistic when making team agreements. Lastly, you will leave by giving your admin ideas for how to improve a DRS session for next time. This part of the DRS protocol is your chance to let your voice be heard. Please take the time to fill out this section of the form as admin values your impactful feedback. Thank you for taking the time to learn or relearn the DRS protocols. I hope this slideshow was helpful in clarifying these essential processes for student growth. Remember, if you have any questions, the TSP team is available and can be reached at tspteam@lusd.org. Thank you again for your time. The work you do every day to ensure student success is admirable, impactful, and appreciated. For more content like this, make sure to check out the TSP newsletter each month, where we will be providing you with resources and support to use in your classroom. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.